Good afternoon, everyone. This is Michael May from Medesk. I'm going to be a host today for this webinar on switching practice management providers. I wonder if you can all hear and see me. If you could just write to me in the chat just to introduce yourself, that would be great. And it'll have the dual purpose of letting me know everything's okay as well. So do look forward to your messages there. We'll start in another 30 seconds or so. We'll just enable people to make sure they've loaded up the webinar link and everything, and we'll start from there. So speak to you shortly. Okay, I think we'll make a start then. So for those of you who haven't been here very long, my name is Michael. I'm going to be your host today for the webinar here. So we're going to be focusing on the challenges associated with changing practice management providers, and we're going to talk a little bit about why you all want to do so in the first place. You know, what sort of prompted that, and we're going to look at some of the changes you might be able to make. So a little bit about Medesk first, obviously, so you can understand the context in which we're coming from. So we are a healthcare IT company focusing on one thing, which is practice management. And to that end, we have a practice management platform that we've developed that enables you to pretty much run your practice all on one screen, integrating all the different activities you might have going on with external partners and so on, like labs, bringing it all under one sort of roof. So these figures sort of speak for themselves. I'm not going to sort of read them out to you. They've been on the screen for a while. So today, we're going to talk about switching your practice management system in general, and also as it relates to Medesk, of course, and just to sort of investigate what it is you can actually achieve from doing so, and just to discuss some of the challenges involved and how you might actually be able to get through those. So before we really start, what I'd like to know is, you're all here for a reason. You're obviously thinking to some degree about switching from your current provider. And if you could let me know the main reason, if there's one big main reason above all others, why that might be, it'll help me direct the webinar accordingly so that we can make sure we discuss the right things. So I'll give you a little bit of time to respond to that question, and then we'll make a start. I can see a couple of you typing there in the chat, so we'll wait for you to say your piece. For the rest of you, don't be shy. The aim here really is just to get a dialogue going, just to make sure that this session is actually useful to you and not just some sort of mouthpiece for Medesk, really. So do feel free to interact. Okay, so we've got a nice selection of answers there. That's great. Just a sec, there we go. So the Y physiotherapy practice says updating software to be online. Now that makes a lot of sense, of course. Being online is generally beneficial in terms of not dealing with much paper, firstly, but secondly, having something that you can use not just in the practice, but actually when you're on the move as well. So yeah, that's a pretty good reason. Victoria Scott says, currently not switching, but debating the use of a management system. So in other words, you're looking at what's the point of it in the first place. Fair enough. There are plenty of arguments for using it, some of which we'll cover today. And then my colleague Christine will be doing a short presentation at the end that will probably convince you as to the use of it in general, rather than switching from one to the other. So we will get to your particular concern as we go through today's session. Dell from Tickle Medical Services says, prescribing safety, tabulated lab results, recall system, clinic audit capability. She has a huge list, but these functions are missing from our current system. So yeah, all obviously very, very important, significant issues, all of which I believe we can address in Medesk, actually. I don't think we're going to discuss too much about those individual features today, although I can certainly say that recall is something that we can do in terms of our analytics tool, whereby you can actually break down different groups of patients into who needs a recall and when, and then sort of send a message out all at once to everyone. So there's lots of things we can do. That's just one of those several that you've asked. I would have thought Christine would have some more information on that again at the end, and also we'd be happy to have a conversation with you at a later date as well, just one-to-one. Lisa says, previously used the system and now thinking about using something that's quicker and more efficient all in one. Yeah, so that's pretty much what we do at Medesk. That's the whole idea of it, in that we act as a sort of platform for everything all in one place, rather than having disparate bits and pieces here and there and everywhere, and slowing things down. So yeah, so it sounds like you're all here for the reasons that we'd hoped you'd be, and hopefully we're able to help you out, at least in terms of ideas, if not in terms of interest in what we do ourselves. So I wanted to just go through some of the challenges that I thought you'd face, and some of the challenges that I've certainly noted that my clients have faced, and that's why they've come to Medesk and been able to resolve those things. So the way I see it is that the problems are several-fold, and these are sort of the 5 main categories that I came up with just for today. You may or may not be suffering from too many of these, but I would expect you have at least one of these that would ring a bell. So we're going to look at things to do with workload. So not having a very good management system, or any management system, obviously leads to a high level of workload. And the workflow is harder. Security concerns are obviously a big thing when you're dealing with software in general. In terms of your current system, a lot of systems out there are quite stagnant. They do stay the same. They sort of get to a certain level, which is good, and then they sort of stay there, and then you kind of outgrow them. So there are a couple of issues I'd like to discuss with regards to that. And then, of course, in terms of the updating software to be online, as the folks at Y Physiotherapy Practice said, if it's not online, then actually you may have some trouble accessing it unless you're actually sat at the clinic, either with your paper notes or with your with the software on the computer itself. And then one of the biggest things I've come across that we probably do better than anything that I can think of is the quality of support. So a lot of providers out there are a bit sort of I wouldn't say that the support is necessarily their major concern. They maybe have all sorts of different features and things, but the support is often slow and clunky and not particularly user friendly. So we've tried to make a difference in that regard, and we'll discuss that as well. So in terms of workflow, the whole point, or expensive, as my colleague Christine says, that's true. Yeah, so obviously there's that famous, Venn diagram where you've got expense, speed, and quality, and obviously to get somewhere close to the middle is quite hard. You either get two of the three, or at best. So yeah, in terms of practice management systems, the whole point is to make things easier and more streamlined for you. The problem is that if your system is not one that's updated very often, or it's something that it doesn't really do the kind of things you expect it to do, your workflow is not going to be reduced. It's going to be increased, if anything. So in terms of communication with patients, anything that involves sort of routine tasks, really. So repeat prescriptions, making bookings, things like that. Lots of paperwork-based stuff that plenty of systems don't actually really. They don't really sort of contribute to any extra speed in that. They digitize it, yes, but don't really make it quicker. So what we do essentially is we try to streamline as much as possible, so that the only thing you really need to do is click a few buttons to generate various things, whether it's referral letters or prescriptions or notes to the GP or anything like that. We try and cut down as much as possible out of the aspects of the tasks that you don't really need to do by hand or manually every time. So putting the patient's name in the right place, or their address, or their details, or their current medical conditions, or anything like that. We try to make sure it's all as click button and streamlined as we can. One of the biggest things I've found is a problem is loading times. So if your practice management system is based on your computer, in other words, it's installed on there as a program, and it's you're keeping the data on your side, the more and more data you gather, the harder and harder it is to actually run the software and collect all that data as you go along, having it load up on the screen without it taking forever. And now the major way we tackle that is the fact that we take all that burden on ourselves. So Medesk is in fact what you call cloud-based. So in other words, we're the ones who host all the servers and all the data and all the rest of it in a secure way, so that you don't actually have to worry about any of that infrastructure or even downloading anything on the computer either. So what it means essentially is that no matter how old your computer is, within reason, Medesk will still work on it. In terms of the workflow mismatch, what I mean to say is that the program you're using is not necessarily designed to do exactly what you do. So in other words, it's not really designed for your workflow, and you're kind of sort of hammering it in there, trying to sort of force the system to do what it is that you want it to do. So the way in Medesk that we've tried to get around this is that we've made it quite more of a sort of a sandbox kind of experience, in a way, in the sense that all the tools are there, but the way that you use them is up to you. And there are multiple ways of doing things and multiple ways of configuring things. And what we do is we sort of guide you through the best way to match up what we have with what you need. So my colleague says, Christine, she says, also working on mobile devices. Yes, so Medesk is actually completely free of any particular operating system or anything like that. So you don't need to have a certain computer or a certain device or anything like that, or a certain version of Windows or anything like that. All you actually need is a Google Chrome browser, and that's it. Obviously, you need to use it on a phone. It needs to be a relatively smart phone, at least like a phone that would connect to the internet and everything like that. It's not going to be, you're not going to be able to use one of the old style indestructible sort of Nokia type phones from 10, 20 years ago. In terms of security concerns, obviously it's a very, very important thing to consider when you're using any sort of software, especially if it's something where the data is not actually on your premises necessarily. So there are obviously pros and cons of actually not having the data on your premises. I would say having it on your premises physically means that if there are any sort of incident at your premises, then that data is at risk. Whereas if it's stored elsewhere, as long as it's stored well and stored securely, then actually, one, you don't have to worry about keeping an eye on it yourself, and two, if anything is lost or there's any issue at your end, you actually have that backup available to you. And so what we do essentially is we use Amazon servers, and actually they're used so widely now. And the way we encrypt the data on those servers is at the same level of online banking. So it's very, very, very resistant to any sort of hacking attempts. And we've never had such an instance so far. In terms of the way the data is stored, what we do is we kind of encrypt it and mix it all up. and then we actually sent it to 3 separate locations, so that if any one place on our side was corrupted or destroyed by whatever force majeure, then actually it wouldn't make much difference because the data is already in those other 2 locations as well. So it means it is very, very safe and something you can rely on. And now one of the other benefits of actually having the data stored elsewhere, in other words, not on your premises, not on your actual computer, it means that you can access Medesk from anywhere. So whether, if you're on the train and you want to just finish up some notes, or you want to check your schedule for the next day, or whatever you want to do, you can do that on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop, whatever you like. As long as you've got the right login details, then you can access that. So it does mean that you can work from home if you're doing video calls. Means you can work on the move, as I've said. Gives you a whole range of flexibility. And one of the biggest things is you don't need to hire any sort of IT specialist or tech guru on your side, because the idea is that we cover their responsibilities for you. So while we're not going to be setting up your computer and stuff like that at your end, in terms of keeping hold of your data and actually making sure that your practice management platform runs properly, that's all on us. And that's really what we're here for. And the idea is to cut out that expense, because IT staff are very, very expensive, and often when you look at what they're actually doing for you, it's expense for not very much at all, actually. So we aim to take that out of the equation. One of the main things I like to look at, in what I experience very frequently when people coming to me, is that they've kind of outgrown what they're currently using. So what they're using it used to be at some point, a driver for improving and a driver for achieving new things. But at some point, the provider, the practice management system, sort of either slowed down in the way that they are innovating, or became quite stagnant, as some of them are. And actually, it's something that I really like to make a point that our idea is to grow along with you. So. We have a question actually in the chat, so I'll just answer that and then I'll continue. So Del asks, do you take telephone calls for support, or is it email ticket support? I will get onto this actually shortly, but to answer your question concisely, we offer both, and we also have live chat and on-screen support as well. So there's a huge amount we can do. So yeah, I mean, for us, email support would be the bronze standard, if you will. We actually prefer live chat or on-screen support, where we can actually talk to you, show you what we mean, provide you with videos, annotated guides, annotated screenshots, all that sort of thing. So our support is really gold standard, I'm not afraid to say. So I hope that answers your question. In terms of the business growth limitations that I was talking about, so what I find is that when you're stuck with a service provider that you're, not necessarily very happy with anymore, you find that there's no real scope for you to develop, whether that's changing the way you do things or changing the actual scale of what you're doing. So if you're trying to grow, you're trying to open a new premises and so on, you don't really have the decision-making tools there to actually know what to do. So what I found is that without a dedicated sort of analytics tool where you can get all sorts of business intelligence, and also clinical intelligence as well, it's really hard to understand how you're performing. You can obviously look at the financial side of things and see what your revenues are and all that sort of thing, but you can't very well necessarily see how you're doing in terms of quality of care, how you're doing in terms of cancellations, why they're happening, what the exact scenario is, all sorts of things like that are harder to work out unless you have a dedicated tool for it built in. And so what I would say is that Medesk actually does have an analytics tool built in. And the idea is that it takes all the data that you put into the system, whether it's an appointment, whether it's a patient record, whether it's an invoice, whether it's a lab order, or whether it's your payroll information. In fact, it actually brings it all together and enables you to pretty much find out whatever it is you want to know. So you essentially set a goal, you set up a report for it, and then you run that report every now and then and see how you get on. And what it does really is gives you that confidence and that evidence with which you can actually make decisions. And you know, just like medicine is evidence-based, business development should be as well, wherever possible. Another thing I've really noticed as well is that when you're growing, obviously you're going to be hiring new staff, and that's obviously going to be costly to you. But the most practice management platforms and systems that I know of don't actually help you with that. They actually want to charge you more based on the pure fact that you've got someone else working with you. Now, over the lockdown period, we sort of had a really good think about this and found that actually it's not something that we believe is very fair. Because what if you've got 10 people working with you, but you've got half the amount of appointments you normally would have? Why would you want to pay the same amount as you'd paid before when you're actually getting half of the amount of revenue coming in? It doesn't sound fair, and it isn't fair. And so what we've done, and we've had for quite a while now, is actually a pricing system where it's done by appointment. So you pay per appointment that you actually provide. And it's done on a sort of 100 appointment per month increment. And so that actually you only pay really for what you actually use. So it's much like with your phone data. You know, if you use less data, you know, the next month you probably want to see if you can, you know, downgrade to a lower data plan, for example. It works in much the same sort of logic, in that we don't want you paying for things that you're not actually doing. It's just not fair, as I've said. And the other thing is that, as I've mentioned, sort of here, there, and everywhere so far, the main problem I have with a lot of systems, not just in healthcare even, but everywhere, is that there's a lack of updates that are, you know, anything but just sort of bug fixes or little tweaks here and there. There's no sort of significant improvement over time that's quick enough for you to really benefit from. And that's something that we really try to stand out in terms of, you know, whether we're integrating with labs or, you know, whether we're improving the way you can communicate with patients, or, you know, or linking up with pharmacies and all the rest of it. You know, our goal is to actually make sure that we keep moving. And so as you develop and as you have new ideas, we take those on board and actually, you know, take action. That's really what we're trying to do. I can see a question's being written. I am going to just wait for a second before I proceed to the support issues that I expect you experience. Just want to wait for this question, just in case. Is the software more for doctors than physios? No, not really. To be honest, Medesk is suitable for anything that's done on an outpatient sort of basis. The only thing I'd say it's not suitable for is actually hospitals or, you know, inpatient stays. The fact that you're a physio makes little difference in terms of what Medesk provides, to be honest with you. I mean, for example, you may not be prescribing, or you may not be using the ICD-10 database, or, you know, linking up with pharmacies, for example. But there's a huge amount that you will be doing that's related to purely the management of a practice, regardless of whether it's, you know, medical, physio, you know, chiropractor, whatever it is. Actually, so many of those things overlap, aside from the actual specialty that it is. And I would imagine that my colleague Christine will, when she does her little presentation at the end, to sort of outline our features, you'll be able to kind of see what I mean, I think. And of course, she'd be willing to do a one-on-one guided tour as well for you. And we do have a few physios on our books actually already, so I can assure you that it does work for them. Otherwise, they would have left, I would have thought. Okay, so just to talk about the issues with provider support. So it's one of the biggest sort of bugbears that I have, in that a lot of systems, what they do is they sort of get you on board, they train you up as much as they can, and then they sort of leave you to it. And now for me, that's not much cop, to be honest, because there's no guarantee that you won't have any issues in the future. You might have questions, you might have new people to train, all sorts of things. And actually, it's not something that's very well dealt with in the practice management sort of industry, if you will. So some of the biggest problems I've come across, I don't know if you want to add to this in the comments, in the chat there, but some of the main things I've come across is the really, really bad response times, actually, where you're waiting hours or sometimes even days for a response, especially if it's by email. And obviously that's no good if you've got a patient waiting in front of you, really. If one of your printable documents is broken, or you can't seem to get the prescription working or anything like that, it's not ideal to make the patient wait or make them come back, or anything like that. So what we actually have is a live chat system. So you can pretty much just write to us there and then, get a response within 5-10 minutes, and then actually get a resolution to your problem. And even if you can't solve the problem immediately, at least we can diagnose the issue, let you know how long it will take to sort out, and you can tell the patient what's going on, or you can tell your colleagues what's going on. Because I find that sometimes I'm very, very keen to solve things as quickly as possible, but I find that sometimes when it's a complex issue, it's just as valuable to know when things will be done as it is to know that in general that they're going to be done. It's all about expectation, really. And the same with the patients, if you tell them, unfortunately, it's going to take us a couple of hours to sort this out, but we've been assured that it's going to be fine, they're going to be much more happy than if you say, oh, we don't know what's going on. And so, that's really why we try and come in with the live chat there. The other thing that I have come across is that a lot of the account managers you might get assigned don't necessarily have a very deep understanding of your workflow. Now, that can be for many reasons. It can be because they don't have any particular experience of working in healthcare themselves. Might be they have a purely IT background, for example, or sales background or something like that. But also, they may not necessarily be oriented towards understanding your workflow in a very specific way to make sure they can help. And that's one of the biggest things that we try to differentiate ourselves in that when you go through the training period with us and all the setup period, what you actually do is you have a conversation with your account manager, whether that's me or whether that's one of my colleagues. And what we do is we actually dig into your workflow. We really try to understand how you work from basic principles. And we, of course, we match that up to Medesk, and we sort of direct the training and all the sort of onboarding, as we call it, around that process. And so the idea is that you have the least amount of friction as possible when learning how to use Medesk, but also we make sure that the way that the platform works is actually suited to your particular way of working, whether that's specialty related or whether that's because you are you just have a particular way of working that is unique to you. And so as my colleague Christina said in the chat, actually, that I haven't noticed, she's said that we are customized, which is of course true, and tailored for each area of healthcare with different consultation templates and reports for each one. And that's true. So on a sort of specialty level, we have different templates and different ways of doing things for everyone, but also on a clinic by clinic basis, if you do things slightly different from all the other physios, for example, we can take that into account. And in terms of the training, a lot of the problems I have with people being trained is that they don't quite realize that actually training is a really, really important part of providing a medical platform. And it's not something that you should just be left to your own devices to do. There's a lot you can do for yourself. You can, for example, we've got all sorts of videos and things you can watch and replicate for yourselves in terms of workflow. But at the same time, it's nice to have a guiding hand. It's nice to have someone who's been there and sort of done it all before in terms of the way Medesk works or the platform works, and actually show you what's what, without you having to pay for it. By the way, it's one thing I really don't like, paid sessions. We don't do that at all. Any training you need is completely free. So I wonder if there are any questions from the audience so far. There is actually one already. Just about anything we discussed so far, just while I answer the questions here. So the question is, do you have generic training guides available on Medesk if you've forgotten something or it isn't a support problem? And as my colleague Christine has already answered, yes. Actually, no, she hasn't answered that. It's a slightly different comment. But yeah, so the answer is yes. We do have generic training guides, both in terms of video, in step-by-step guides with annotated screenshots, and also all sorts of written manuals. There's the live chat if you want to just ask a question. We're quite happy to answer a question there. It's not like it's technical questions only. If you want to say, remind me how to do this, you can just let us know. It's not a problem at all. We'll jump on a call and we'll make sure that you're up to speed. It's far better than having you read through something. I think. So yeah, whichever way you feel support is required, we'll provide it that way. We also do have weekly training webinars as well on a regular basis. So if you just want to jump on a training session to refresh yourself after a couple of weeks off, for example, then you're quite welcome to do that as well. And so I've spoken quite a lot more about Medesk itself than I'd intended to be honest. But what I want to talk about now is really how you'd look at your current workflow and really how that involves there's a question. Better answer that. The Y physiotherapy practice asks, can you integrate my current clinic software into yours, including the accounts? So if you mean by integrating the software in terms of like the information or the data you've gathered on there, then yes, most likely. What we'd need to do, and I will discuss this a little bit later, is we would need to actually look at that data in terms of the way it's organized and everything, and then come up with a way to help you get it out of that particular software and then put it up onto ours. And we do have experience with various of the most used providers in the UK in particular. And so, yes, we can do that. Christine has asked me to explain about APIs for online booking as well, please. Okay, so in the event that you have, for example, an online booking system that you really, really like, but you don't necessarily have like a practice management system on the other end, or maybe you do, but you want to change the practice management system, but not the online booking, then actually there's no reason to use our online booking unless you actually want to switch over. We do have a way where you can keep your online booking system as it is, and all the information from those bookings will still go into Medesk. So yes, in terms of that, that's right. And mobile apps, I'm not sure what Christine's referring to there exactly. She'll elaborate on that, I expect, and we can talk about that as well. Yeah, so what Christine's saying is essentially the mechanism I've talked about for linking up your online booking can be done on a mobile app sort of level as well. It doesn't have to be sort of laptop only or computer only. You may well need the help of some IT support on your end to do that. It may be the person who made the app or the company who made the app. But as long as they're willing to collaborate, we're always happy to work with them to help you out. So it's not like you'd have to be monitoring that relationship or trying to push that relationship forward on your own. As long as you put us in touch, we'd do the rest. So in terms of switching, one of the biggest problems, of course, is the workflow. So changing the way you do things is painful sometimes, and it's especially painful when you've got colleagues around you who may be resistant to that change because it changes how they work. They may have to put a bit more effort into learning a new system or a way of doing things. But actually, it's well worth the time if you can present that in a way to them that that they're on board with it. And so there are a couple of things I'd like you to note that you should be thinking about when switching provider, as it relates to your workflow at least. And that's to first of all realize that it is the optimal time to make changes, because if you're changing your provider anyway, it's the ideal moment to sort of make a few tweaks here and there to the way you do things in general. Because if someone's learning a new system anyway, you may as well have them learn everything at once. I wouldn't say, overhaul everything completely and, drown everyone around you with the changes. But in general, to make tweaks and, optimize things, it's definitely the time to do it. Especially if the system that you've now got or you're going to get is, able to accommodate those changes, whereas your older system couldn't. And one of the main things I'd like you to look at as well is the patient pathway. So both from a business perspective and a clinical perspective. So you'd be needing to look at, how you're currently acquiring patients, how you're actually servicing their needs, and how you're keeping hold of them at the end. And so it's very, very worth considering how you actually do those things, and then matching up what you're doing there to the things that the system you're using can actually do. So can it help you acquire patients? Does it make it easier for patients to book, for example? Does it make it easier for you to produce medical documents for them? Does it make it easier to remind them to turn up to their appointments and for you to retain them? It's all about those kinds of things. It's worth looking at your relationships with external providers as well, because a lot of the people you're working with, whether it's labs or whether it's your accounting software or whatever else it might be, there's a good chance that we either work with them already in terms of synchronizing the information from one place to the other, or even if we don't work with them, there's obviously a very good chance that we'd be willing to look into it if you mention it to us. So we are very client driven in the sense that if you say you want something, we're not just going to jot it down somewhere in a notepad. We are actually going to analyze that and have a look at it for you. In terms of the internal communication side of things, I found one of the biggest problems with changing softwares, as I said a moment ago, is how your colleagues and how your staff are actually taking that. So a lot of people are resistant to change. A fairly sort of significant proportion are willing to go along with things but aren't necessarily keen, and only say 10 or 20% of people are actually actively looking to push things forwards themselves in their jobs. And that's those sort of figures are sort of very applicable to a lot of different things, including the adoption of medical software and practice management software. So it's all about looking at how you're communicating with your colleagues, showing them how their workday will actually improve in terms of if you change the way you're doing things, how it makes it better, and convincing them in that. And of course, as I've said repeatedly so far, when you're thinking about your workflow and how it might change when you switch, make sure that you ask help from your new provider, because it's up to them essentially to make sure their product fits what you need. Obviously, you're going to be doing a lot of investigation yourself, but it's up to them to kind of say, well, actually, it doesn't fit. This isn't going to work. So what you'll want to do is make sure that they're as open as possible. They can tell you what they can do, what they can't do, and they can help you, put it all together. And so just a couple of things that we do in terms of patient acquisition, just so we can talk about a few features and not just, the benefits and, disadvantages of this and that and everything else. So in terms of patient acquisition, we're quite strong on this in that we try to make it as easy as possible in sort of this lockdown kind of period to get hold of people and actually make sure that they turn up. So in terms of online booking, we provide all sorts of different online booking pathways, whether it's specific locations you need, specific services, or specific clinicians or practitioners. And what we do is make sure that patients and clients book precisely what they intend to, and precisely what they need, rather than just booking a generic appointment that you then have to follow up on and check. So we're doing sort of as much of the sort of pre-screening and validation and stuff as possible at the same time. So we can add things in like COVID screening and questionnaires and anything else you'd need to make sure that the patient's suitable. And on that front as well, what we do is we can include a prepayment section in there. So when someone makes a booking online, they're actually asked to make a payment. And now this, in most specialties, is a positive thing because patients don't mind paying a small portion of the visit cost, and also it gives them that understanding that what you do is valuable. So it's a weird thing about human nature in that if we get something completely for free, we don't always value it because we think, well, it must be free for a reason, and that reason isn't necessarily complementary to the person providing it. And so what we kind of say is, we'll actually charge them something, cover your overheads, make sure that your business can keep running, and actually it will not only make your finances look a bit better, but also it will encourage people to actually turn up. And so what we do is we let you offer prepayments via different sort of algorithms, if you will. So whether you want them to pay the full amount at once, or whether it's a partial amount, might be a certain percentage of the fee, or it might be a sort of standard fixed deposit. You can also make it mandatory or optional as well. So if you find that actually a lot of your patients don't really want to pay online, you can actually let them get away with it. And you can run all sorts of experiments on this in Medesk actually itself, and see whether one idea or another works for you. So you can look at how many bookings you're getting over a certain time period, what the revenue's like, whether the person turned up, all the rest of it, and then you can then change a few variables and then try the same thing again. And very quickly you'll start to understand what works and what doesn't for your particular scenario. Because that's the thing, that there are no really sort of hard and fast rules. What works for one person in one clinic may not work for the next. There will be a degree of teasing those things out for you. And that's what our analytics module really does. Helps you get to the bottom of those kind of problems. And of course, in terms of integrating with external providers, here are just a few examples of the providers that we integrate with. So if you work with any of these people here, then you'll know that if you use Medesk, there'll be no problems whatsoever in terms of keeping that relationship going. You don't need to switch your lab, or switch your pharmacy, or switch your marketing team's approach or anything like that. So I'm not going to read all these out. This seems a bit pointless, but needless to say, we can integrate with lots of different things, from whether you're looking at promoting your practice, whether you're looking at patient communication with bulk text messages, or automated confirmations and reminders of appointments, or whether you're making sure your practitioners are on the ball in terms of when their next appointments are, even if they don't log into Medesk very often, or whether you just want to send out your lab results and lab requests digitally, rather than having to package everything up and write out forms to go along with the sample. Lots and lots of stuff we can do. And yes, Christine says, or liver medications, indeed. So I wasn't going to mention anyone particularly, but we do work with Signature Pharmacy, which has been mentioned here. So you can actually send them a prescription through Medesk just by clicking a button. And what happens is then they process that prescription with the patient, they get the patient to pay for it, and then they send that out to the patient's designated address, all for you. So it's pretty handy in terms of lockdown, especially when you're doing video consultations and you want to prescribe someone something. You can get that done with a click. And yeah, it's free. Actually, it's completely free. So we've arranged with Signature Pharmacy for the whole thing to be free for anyone using Medesk, so that there's no charge from us in terms of us, linking you up with them. And one of the things I want to mention before I do move on is that actually, in terms of these external providers, if there's anyone you work with that you wish we could, all you've got to do is tell us. And what we'll do is we'll look into it from a technical perspective, see how possible it is, see how difficult it is to do as a sort of project. And then we'll see how many other people are interested in it out of all the people who use Medesk. And then from there, we'll come to a decision as to how and when we might develop that connection for you. So, don't ever be afraid to ask for something, because chances are you'll get it sooner or later. And in terms of communications, and so Christine says, of course, if the other side is open for integrations, that's true. As long as the other party is happy to work with us, then we're never going to object. That's true. So what I wanted to say just quickly about the internal communication side of things is that actually what we're trying to do is optimize the way that you work together with your colleagues, especially in terms of lockdown, when some of you might not actually be physically in the same location. We have many ways of making sure that you stay on top of things in terms of admin, in terms of paperwork, in terms of delegating tasks. So if a booking comes in, you get a notification. It can be by email, or it can be through Medesk itself. You can delegate tasks to individual people. So it can be individual practitioners, or it can be whole departments. So it might be a memo to the whole department, or it might be a task for the whole admin team, and whoever gets there first actually resolves that issue, however you see. And also, of course, related to the previous slide, we do integrate with various online digital calendars as well, whether Google Calendar, iCal, if it's on your phone, we do push those appointments through to there as well. We have a question. If someone pays via a Zero payment link, will Zero reconcile the invoice in Medesk? That is a good question. At the present moment, I think that the reconcilement would still need to be done semi-automatically. I think you'd still need to take a look in Medesk and actually record that Zero has said something. The integration is largely one way, in the sense that it's anything you do in Medesk gets sent to Zero, and then Zero is the kind of master account where your accountant would be sitting. Reason being, you don't really want your accountant looking through all your patient information. It's probably something worth discussing with Christine afterwards in terms of the specifics, but what I've just said is my understanding of the situation. Yeah, so overall, in terms of the financial side of things, the workflow goes sort of Stripe. So in other words, a prepayment or an online booking was paid for, or someone had used a patient portal and paid. Medesk makes a note of that, and then that information is then sent out to Zero from there. So it's a sort of a flow of information. And in terms of just to elaborate on the answer to that as well, in terms of if you want to look at all your aged receivables, or you want to look at all the payments coming and going in Medesk, what you can actually do is run a report that will show you that information, and then what you can do is match that up against what Zero has told you, if you really want to do the reconcilement. So in terms of asking a new provider for help, so whether you want to use Medesk or not, I think these points still apply. I think you really have to make sure that your workflow matches what the new product is saying it can do. You should make sure that the training's going to involve bespoke content. So it's not just going to be a generic training session that is fit for anyone. It should be specifically training that's optimized for your particular situation. So it needs to take into account your context and your way of doing things, and we do that pretty well. In terms of support, like I said earlier, I do find that a lot of people actually have kind of a system where they provide loads of support in the beginning and then just kind of let people get on with it, throw them in the deep end a little bit. So we don't really do that. Instead, what we actually have is a system where you're assigned a dedicated account manager, and you will get to receive support from them at any point in the future. So if you need to ask a question on live chat, or if you need to have another training session or train some new colleagues, you'll have a dedicated person in Medesk to actually go to for that. In terms of our feature development, I've kind of said it already, but what we do is we make sure that we're client-driven. So you guys are at the coalface of medicine and healthcare, so you know what you need better than we do. I mean, several of our team do have links to healthcare. I myself have a clinical background, but actually still not being there on a day-to-day basis, we don't have as good an understanding as you do as to what you as an individual person and individual practice actually need. So what we advise you do is just tell us everything you need, let us know what it is you're missing, and then we will look into it as best we can. And we do actually have, quite so. So I left the NHS not too long ago, and so I act as a kind of bridge, between the IT world and healthcare world, because they're very, very, very different, I find. And the having a bridge between them is quite rare, really. So I found myself in a bit of a unique position, which I hope you can benefit from. And so in terms of what we do, we make sure that actually we pretty much put your request to the vote. So we make sure that loads of people want something before we develop it, or even if they don't, if it's something we can still do for you, actually we'll do it anyway. We just have to make sure that the research and development team is, has taken a good look at things and is happy to proceed. So any particular query you might have, no matter how large or small, it's worth telling us, because the chances are we'll act on it. One of the biggest things I wanted to look at as well now is about migrating data, because I know that you all probably find it a very scary prospect, pushing your data from one place to another, not losing anything and all the rest of it. Not to mention how it might be costly or time consuming. And it's a really big problem actually. And so what I want to say is that with Medesk, what in most cases what we're able to do is transfer all your patient records, all the medical notes associated with that, and all the invoicing information as well. And what we normally advise you to do is provide a sample of that data for us. It can even be a dummy patient as long as the structure of the information is the same. Just provide it to us so that we can actually have a look and we can understand whether that information is something that we can actually handle and we can import for you. And so then what you'll get out of that is an upfront explanation. We'll let you know if there's going to be any limitations involved, whether there's something we can do or can't do. And then at least you'll know whether it's right to proceed for you and whether that data migration is going to be as painless as you'd like or not. So we do like to be very, very transparent on that because we do know that you, in general, find that a very scary prospect and it's a very real concern for you. And we totally understand that. If you're interested in asking us about this and seeing whether we could actually migrate for you, what I'd advise you do is if you ask your current provider for a data dump or export and ask them to put it in a CSV spreadsheet format. So it's basically like an Excel format, to be honest. There's very little difference in terms of the way it looks to you. And that is the best sort of format for us to have a look at and see what we can do with it. So that would be my advice. In terms of evaluating Medesk for your clinic, we have a very sort of thorough sales process. So it's not just like a sort of here's what we do, either buy it or don't kind of approach. Our sales managers are very, very thorough. And what we actually do is we provide you with a full interactive guided tour. So you get a full animated presentation of what we do and an on-screen demonstration of any of the features you're interested in. And what you also get on top of that is if you want, you can have the person who'd be designated as your account manager to join in those sessions for some questions and answers and for some further, more deeper questions that are perhaps not sort of within the remit of the sales manager. So it might be more business development related. It might be more clinical, and those kinds of questions really. So in my case, given the clinical background, I find myself often brought in to answer more clinical questions and clinical governance questions, that sort of thing, rather than just basic everyday things. And of course, if you want after that, you can have a trial account as well, which will give you full access to the live chat that I keep boasting about, and you will be able to see it for yourself, really. Just and we can guide you. We can actually have your potential future account manager guide you through everything. You can just ask them anything you like, and see whether Medesk works for you. Take it for a dry run with the account manager at your side, and see if it works for you. And of course, as I've sort of alluded to a few times here, one of the biggest problems you have during a transition between softwares is handling your colleagues. Now, if you are a solo practitioner, the same lessons apply to you. And frankly, even if you're not a solo practitioner, it's not just your colleagues that will face these issues or come across these problems, but you actually will yourself as well. And so what we try and do is make sure that you're fully aware that you've got all the support you want. So the training is completely unlimited. There's nothing that we won't do in terms of training. I mean, at the moment, I'm not going to, travel across half the country to come and meet you in person or anything, because that's, obviously not appropriate. But in terms of the digital side of things on screen, anything is possible. If you need us to take remote control of your computer and physically show you on screen what to do, we can do that. If you just want us to show you ourselves on our computer, we can do that. If you just want a few step-by-step instructions with a few pictures, we can do that. We can make bespoke videos for you there and then. Whatever it is you need to help you get across the line in terms of understanding how to use the system properly. And the live chat, as I keep saying, is really the first port of call. I really recommend it. And we do have an aimed response time of less than 10 minutes. So as far as I'm concerned, less than 10 minutes is way better than the usual hours or days you'd be waiting for a query to be responded to. So I'd recommend trying it out. In terms of the tutorials, what we do is not just train people according to context, but we actually take the individual bits and pieces of Medesk as part of the tutorial and show your colleagues how what they're doing actually makes a difference. So we're kind of showing them by doing by for example, marking where the patient found out about you. You're kind of teaching the clinic where people are coming from to join the practice, and you're actually informing how the practice evolves in the future in terms of how it acquires new patients, the success of that. So it's one example. Another example is if you're getting your colleagues to mark the cancellation reasons. I often discuss with them the concept that if they are marking cancellations and then recording why these things happen, it really helps you to drill down into why things are going the way they are and seeing if you can nip problems in the bud. And it really gives your colleagues at all sorts of different levels of healthcare a real understanding of what difference they make. And I think that when people understand why they need to do things, and when they understand that what they do is actually making a difference, I think it makes them far more likely to be on board with the whole concept and far more likely to perform well. And of course, do allow them to have a say in the matter. I mean, I wouldn't just, from top down, just enforce a new system on a team. Now, obviously, this decision is probably yours rather than anyone else's, but at the same time, their feedback on the ground will be very, very valuable to you in terms of whether a given system or software is actually suitable for your everyday running of the practice. So, within reason, let your colleagues have their say and have some input in the matter. And just quickly in terms of how you actually would get started with Medesk, it all sort of boils down to information really and communication. So you'd answer the questionnaire that we set up for you. You'd get a welcome call from your account manager. You'd then discuss all the workflow and everything else, and you'd set up the account together and set up all the little details together to make sure it matches your clinic's needs. And then we'd proceed on to role-based training for the admin team and the clinicians. And again, the quantity of that is unlimited. So as much training as different people need, they'll get it. So if they're not very good at IT, not very good at computers, we'll just alter the training approach and take them on one by one and train them up. Yep, and just quickly to say, I've already really mentioned it, but just to reiterate that you really do get a say in how Medesk develops. Our sort of main mission really is to grow alongside you. And we're sort of, the idea for us is sort of building a better healthcare system sort of together. In that you'll tell us what the industry needs, and we will make it happen for you. That's the idea. And so what we do is we take all the requests that you send over to us, we review them twice a month, and we put them in a voting system. We compare that against the technical feasibility of things, and then we decide what should take priority. And I want to say again, constructive criticism is always welcome. We never consider that a bad thing. Do feel free to be as critical as possible, as long as you've got an idea as to what we should do instead. We're always very, very happy to hear about that. And so that does bring me to the end of what I wanted to say today. I've talked a lot, I know, but hopefully it's given you some ideas as to how you might actually make that jump from one system to another. And obviously, I hope that you'll consider Medesk in that decision as well. So I'll pass you on to to my colleague Christine here, who will tell you a little bit more about Medesk specifically than I have in terms of what it can do. So yeah, I'll leave you to it, Christine.
Hi everyone. Thanks again for attending. Please, Michael, let me know if you can see my screen. Presumably no.
We can certainly hear and see you. We just need to.
That's good.
Have a look.
All right. There we go.
Yep. There we go. Perfect. On you go.
Right, thank you. I know technology hates me most of the times, but not today, yay. So yeah, again, hi everyone, I hope you're all well. I'd like to thank you for attending our masterclass. My name is Christine, as Michael mentioned a couple of times, and I've been nugging him in the chat section quite a few times today. I'm head up our sales team in the UK, and basically I'd like to run you through a quick 5 minutes presentation just outlining 3 main ways in order to improve your workflow with our medical management software, which is obviously Medesk. Now, we do work with quite a few clinics. There are around 800 clinics around the world, quite a few in the UK as well. And there are a lot of solo practitioners, and there are lots of larger clinics and charities that we work with. And we have gathered quite a lot of experience in working in different healthcare areas. Again, as Michael has mentioned, it doesn't matter in which healthcare area you work. We'll try to adapt and we'll try to customize the platform as much as we can, as much as it allows us to tailor it so that it can cater your needs. It has been proved by the 2020 that the practitioners have to be mobile and flexible and have the access to the data of the patients and have the quick access to actually communicate with the patients. And we tried to adapt to it. And I'm going to quickly show how we did it. But overall, it allows you to access remotely from your mobile devices or from your computer at the clinic to our platform. We're, of course, fully GDPR compliant. And yes, all of our servers are located in the UK solely in 3 different locations, actually, around London. You will also save quite a lot of hours on manual work by placing the online booking link on your website, and we can add your logo and your favorite colors to it so that you have a white labeled platform and the online booking module as a part of your website being installed as an iframe, like kind of like mix and match, and be an essential part of your website. There is a separate services and the doctors that the patient can quickly choose and book the appointment with them. And that also provides the ability to provide a questionnaire to gather the medical background from all of your patients up in advance so that you can verify and qualify the patient before you actually meet them. You can also place your online booking links on your social media pages and share it with your referral partners. We will help you to make a unique link for all of your different places where you are present in the media, like Facebook, Instagram, so that you know, basically, when the patient goes through that booking link, you know where exactly that patient came from, and you can tailor your marketing activities a little bit better to approach each of your target audiences via each particular channel. You can also collect payments and prepayments, as Michael has mentioned, through our patient portal. And basically, it allows you to tailor and specify the amount that you're going to collect, whether it's a fixed fee just to cover your overheads, or a percentage of the total, or a full amount in total. Like if you provide video remote consultations, that again can be quite helpful to not chase after the patients after you provided the services to them. Now, of course, we are integrated with Stripe, and Stripe will send out the receipt to the patient, the confirmation of the payment, and that will be reflected in the platform straight away, so you know that they have prepaid. With the platform, you can pretty much achieve a paperless office. We have got plenty of experience in creating the most comfortable to use and time-saving templates. We can build them from scratch, or you can use the ones that we already have prepared for you to choose from. Just let us know. Again, as I said, it's all free, and we can pretty much recreate your current templates that you use. That's just what I've mentioned, and this is just an example. There are plenty of different buttons, drop-down menus, and different switches, access to the calendar that you can use to actually have more face time with your patient. You can also have the printables, as we call them, printables, be tailored and customized to the way you like them to be. So everything that the patient sees, which is in a printable version or PDF or as a part of the email that gets attached to all of the emails that you can send out from the platform, they're all going to be tailored. They're going to be looking the way you like them to be, pretty much. We also have the BNF drug database and the ICD-10 databases integrated within the platform. So with the drug database, you type a few letters of the name of the medication that you think about that your patient can be already taken or is currently prescribed by yourself. And it shows the active elements, it shows all of the dosages and generics created from the active elements. And if you want to kind of see the relevant research and see how they match with any other medications, you can quickly click that BNF button, as you can see on your screen, and that will take you to the NICE guidelines website, the relevant page of that medication. And the same applies pretty much to the ICD-10 diagnosis database. Type in a few letters of the illness, it gives you a drop-down menu, the list of the relevant ones to choose from. And if you want to look at the relevant research, the recent research or the treatment plan, again, that will take you to the NICE guidelines website. Now, in terms of the uploading any of the files, and if especially you work and you like to work from your iPad or iPhone, you can use those mobile devices to take pictures, take quick photos or snapshots, or make the audio recordings or video recordings and quickly upload them into the database. And the storage is pretty much unlimited. The only limitation that we have is the size of the files, which is, I believe, 50 megabytes, which is quite a large file, I gotta say. Most of the documents that we've seen so far, they weigh around 10 megabytes maximum. Now, this can be particularly useful for tracking the before and after the treatment progress, and can be very useful for both aesthetics side of things. And maybe I know that we have a few trichologists here today that I have spoken to, and yeah, that can be quite useful to you guys as well. To bring a little bit more efficiency to your workflow, you can make use of our analytics module, where you will be able to create pretty much any report that you want, and that can be based on medical or financial or medical related, marketing related data. As you can see on your screen now, there are quite a few things that you can build. And if you are not really into numbers and statistics, just provide us with the examples of the reports that you want to run and want to have available on your platform. We'll create them for you. It's all based on the criteria and conditions, and it's pretty much like working in spreadsheets, but without having to know the formulas or having to pinpoint and copy and paste the data all by yourself manually. As long as you, at some point, input the data into the platform, we will be able to bring it down into the comfortable color-coded report for you to use in the platform, or for you to export as like XLS file or CSV or JSON. And all of those formats are edible as to say, by most of the third parties accounting software. And it's not going to be just Xero. A lot of our customers use Sage that we're not integrated with, or QuickBooks. And you can pretty much download those and send them to your external accountant. Or if they have the access to the platform themselves, you can let them run those reports. Speaking of access, by the way, you can pretty much limit the ability to view, edit, or delete any piece of data within the platform yourself there is a very good access rights configuration feature built into the platform, so you pretty much can restrict the access for your doctors to be able to view any financial data, or if you don't want your receptionist to be able to see any medical sensitive data of your patients, you can prohibit them from viewing all of that apart from just the contact details of the patients, and so on. The same applies to pretty much any team member of your clinic. You can also speed up and automate the process of recall to existing patients, sending out templated messages to specific target groups. So basically, you can build a quick report based on your patient database, set up the criteria. Again, very simple example, quite silly one, but so you want to, for example, send out the happy birthday message and a specific promo offer to all of the females in your database who were born in January and or February, and those who haven't attended your clinic in the past 3 months. So you set up those 3 criteria. The platform produces you with the list, provides you with the list of all of those names and their contact details. You click one button, bulk text message all of those, and they will all get personalized text message with the name and surname, obviously, outgoing from the name of your clinic. You can also send the templated emails and text reminders, and you get to set the frequency of those reminders yourself. As soon as you confirm the appointment, they're going to be getting the round of emails and text messages. Again, with the frequency as many times as you want to nag your patients with it. Now, in terms of the labs integrations, we are currently working with 2 labs, which is the TDL and the county pathology. So it allows you to create the orders, send those out from the platform, whether you are taking the samples, the blood samples, or any other samples yourself, or you can just provide your patient with the number, the reference number that they will use, and they will go to the local lab and provide samples. Now, all of the results will go back directly into the platform. You will receive those, and you can either process them later or just send them out to your patients via email. As Michael has mentioned, and that's my, again, very silly GIF that I have probably had a little bit too much fun with creating for this quick demo. Basically, you can use the telemedicine that we have integrated and developed for, especially for this lockdown situation that we currently have. Basically, you can have a telemedicine module switched on for you, and within a click of a button, you'll be taken to a unique room for each appointment to communicate with your patient and take the notes along as you go. Now, that's pretty much it from me. All I just wanted to mention is there is a pricing section of publicly available for all of our leads and customers on our website. So please check it out. Our pricing starts with £19 per month with the core package. You can choose the add-ons that you want to use. And we also run a special last week of February offer where you can choose a free of charge add-on that you want to try out for the next 3 months. And also a free week for the onboarding. So we'll pretty much set up the platform for you, provide the training on board, and only by the next week you will get charged for using the platform whilst already having everything prepared and the data migrated and so on. So if you're interested, please do feel free to reach out to either myself or just leave a request on our website via the live chat there. And thanks a lot. It was a pleasure to communicate and nag Michael in the chat and joke around, probably mess up his presentation a little bit. But yeah, thanks again for attending. Really appreciate it, and hoping to hear from you at some point, maybe tomorrow. Thanks again. Michael, you probably want to kick me out from here because I have no idea how to do that.
Yeah, I can remove your
please do.
presentation. Yeah, but yeah, thanks very much, everyone. I really appreciate that. Your attention for so long. We've run over time a little bit, but we will be sticking around for another 5 minutes or so for any additional questions. And if you want us to run a personalized presentation for you in private or want to have a chat, just let us know and we'll give you a call tomorrow. But that's it from me. I'll be on chat only from now on. Thanks again, everyone. Bye for now.